Exercise 2, page 67. One.
F. It was built between 3100 BC and 2800 BC. The reason is still unknown.
2.
B. Many sightings of a large, hairy, ape-like creature have been reported in the Pacific Northwest, but no real proof exists.
3.
C. The spacecraft was launched on the 11th of April 1970. 2 days later, the oxygen tank exploded. The crew returned safely to Earth on the 17th of April 1970.
4.
A. In 1947, an extraterrestrial spacecraft was reported to have crashed in New Mexico, and its alien crew was captured.
5.
E. Located in the western part of the North Atlantic Ocean, the region is known for mysterious disappearances of aircraft and ships.
6.
D. The 35th American president was assassinated in November 1963. To this day, no one is sure who killed him and why.
4A. UFO Tour. Exercise 1, page 68. A.
The 8th of July, 1947. Flying saucer captured on ranch in Roswell region.
B.
Strange wreckage and alien bodies examined at Roswell Army Base.
C.
Police officer reports sighting of alien spacecraft in Socorro, New Mexico.
D.
Thousands witness strange lights over Phoenix, Arizona.
Exercise 4, page 69.
The truth isn't out there. Or is it? The annual UFO Festival in Roswell, New Mexico, attracts thousands of visitors each year to this remote desert town. This year, we sent travel journalist Ruth Bradley to take part in a new UFO discovery tour to visit key sites in the area, where the famous 1947 Roswell UFO case unfolded. Did her out-of-this-world experience make her a true believer?
When I was first asked by my editor to report on a UFO discovery tour, my heart sank. I just couldn't understand why I was being sent. Me, a true skeptic. A few days later, I was greeted at the airport in New Mexico by the tour's friendly guide and the other enthusiastic UFO spotters in my group. We were driven to the hotel along busy freeways lined with UFO diners, UFO souvenir shops, and even UFO motels. Little grey aliens stared down at us from billboards and road signs with huge insect eyes. I couldn't help smiling at these amusing sights. If nothing else, I had the feeling I would be having some fun on this assignment. The following morning, we were taken to the spot in Roswell, where a cattle farmer, Mac Brazel, came across some large pieces of metal and a huge hole in the ground on the 8th of July, 1947. Our guide told us that shortly after Mr. Brazel reported what he had seen, the newspaper wrote that he had seen a flying saucer. The next day, however, they changed the story and reported that it wasn't a UFO at all, but simply a weather balloon. I wandered away from the group and looked around in the grass. half hoping to find one last piece of debris from the craft. Instead, I disturbed an enormous rattlesnake and quickly made my way back. I had to admit, the story so far was fascinating, and I found myself looking forward to the next stage of the tour, where we would be shown Building 84. This was the huge aircraft hangar on the old army base where the remains of the strange craft were taken to be examined. It was an impressive sight. Eyewitness accounts later described the craft as unlike anything that had ever been seen on Earth. They said it was made of a material as light as plastic, as strong as steel, impossible to burn, and covered in strange hieroglyphics. Others described seeing alien bodies. The day ended with a visit to the UFO Museum, and I was fascinated by some creepy sketches of alien bodies on autopsy tables, which were drawn by a nurse working in the base hospital at the time. As we headed back to the hotel, I stared up into the starry night and couldn't help wondering if anyone or anything was looking down. The next day, we visited the town of Socorro, where in 1964, Lonnie Zamora, a respected police officer, reported an oval-shaped object with two small creatures inside. As he drew near, blue flames burst from the craft, and it soared into the sky. When Zamora came back with other officers, all that could be seen were burn marks on the ground and strange footprints. The locals in this area have many stories like this one, and I asked whether we were going to go back home with a UFO story of our own. Wait until tonight, the tour guide told me. That night, we camped out in one of the Nevada desert's UFO hotspots. As we looked up into the dark sky, one couple from Phoenix, Arizona, told me about the night in March 1997 when they saw a weird formation of lights hovering above the city. They weren't alone. The strange phenomenon had been witnessed by over 10,000 locals, and there is even video footage of it. I was a bit disappointed that I saw nothing worth photographing that night. What better souvenir to take back to the editor than a photo of a real UFO? I'm still doubtful whether UFOs and aliens exist. However, after spending a night under the stars in the eerie Nevada desert, I have to admit that if intelligent life from a far-off world decided to land on Earth, I wouldn't be at all surprised if this was the place they chose to visit.
Four B. Strange Creatures. Exercise 2, page 70.
In Search of Monsters. Outside the International Cryptozoology Museum, an 8-foot replica Bigfoot stands guard. Glancing around the two rooms, visitors see plaster casts of Bigfoot and Yeti footprints, hair samples, and a life-size model of a coelacanth. Most of the 2,300 specimens of the weird and wonderful that can be found here come from the personal collection of Lauren Coleman, the museum's owner and the world's leading cryptozoologist. Lauren first became fascinated by the study of cryptids, or hidden animals, as a 12-year-old after seeing a documentary on Yetis, but his teacher told him that it was all just nonsense. Unconvinced, he set about finding all there was to know about legendary beasts such as yetis, lake monsters, giant snakes, and chupacabras. His interest led to a lifelong passion for monster hunting and cryptozoology. To date, he has written over 30 books and has spent countless hours traveling and camping out all over the American continent and abroad, interviewing witnesses and examining possible evidence of cryptids' existence, such as footprints, hair samples, scratches, audio tapes of screeches, videos and photos. Not surprisingly, Lauren is often the first person TV producers turn to when they want an expert on the unexplained. He holds a BA in zoology and anthropology, an MA in social work, and has done postgraduate work in sociology and anthropology. His opinion is valued because even though he firmly believes cryptids exist, he still demands hard evidence.
Until I have a hair sample or footprint or twisted branch, I'm really kind of skeptical.
He says.
80% of all accounts are ordinary animals. A few fakes, a few hoaxes. But it's that 20% of unknowns that keeps me going.
A particular interest of Coleman's is one of the most famous cryptids of all, Bigfoot, or Sasquatch, which is said to inhabit forests mainly in the northwestern United States. He believes that there is lots of convincing evidence of its existence, including the famous 1967 Patterson-Grimlin footage of a Bigfoot walking into the forest. Despite many people claiming they were the person in the suit, Lauren points out that the creature walks the way an ape does, with little mobility in the hips and neck. So why hasn't anyone found a real Bigfoot yet? Well, Lauren points out that until 150 years ago, it was believed by most in the Western world that mountain gorillas didn't exist. And before that, the giant panda was virtually unknown. Tales of sightings were taken with a pinch of salt. They were thought to be legends told by native tribes. Respected scientists had to change their opinions, though, when these creatures were found high up in the mountains and deep in the forests. Similarly, the coelacanth is a huge 1.5-meter-long fish that was thought to have become extinct about 65 million years ago, until it was rediscovered in 1938. But no one had mentioned this to islanders in the Indian Ocean, who had been happily eating it for ages. So, if a fish from prehistoric times is still swimming around, why can't Bigfoot and other strange creatures be hidden away in a forest somewhere? Lauren argues that cryptids are not monsters at all, just species of animal that are few in number, live far from human settlements, and are highly secretive. Cryptozoology is definitely Lauren's life, but has he ever seen a cryptid himself? He admits that one dark night on the way home, he glimpsed a large panther-like creature, but he's reluctant to call it a cryptid.
Western science decides if animals exist or don't exist.
He says. Lauren isn't trying to prove anything to the world. He just wants to find out the truth.
(4C) Culture Corner. Exercise 4, page 72.
Haunted London. London dates back to Roman times and has a long, often violent and tragic history. For this reason, it is believed by some to be one of the most haunted capital cities in the world. There are hundreds of stories of ghosts in old buildings, parks, streets, graveyards and even theatres and tube stations. If you aren't too afraid, read on. The Tower of London. From medieval times to the early 20th century, the Tower of London has had a long, cruel history of imprisonment, trials, executions, and torture. It's no wonder then that sightings of ghosts are a common occurrence here. One of the most frequently seen ghosts is the headless Anne Boleyn, the unlucky wife of Henry VIII, who was beheaded at the Tower in 1536. There is also the White Lady, whose perfume is said to fill the air surrounding the White Tower, and who was once spotted waving to a group of children visiting the opposite building. Stories of ghostly goings-on at the Tower of London are several and still occur today. The Theatre Royal, Drury Lane. This theatre first opened its curtains to the public in 1663 and is therefore London's oldest working theatre. Many phantoms supposedly make their presence felt during the performances here. Some say that Joseph Grimaldi, a mischievous clown who died in 1837, often kicks actors, ushers and cleaners from behind as they work. Another clown, Dan Leno, who was famous for his clog dance, can sometimes be heard practicing his routine over and over again. The theatre's most famous ghost, however, is the Man in Grey, who only appears at the beginning of a successful performance. Unlike most ghosts, he does not make people freeze in terror and is seen as a welcome addition to the theatre.
"4D, Everyday English. Exercise 1A, page 73.
This is the right place to get tickets for the Tower of London, isn't it? Yes, it certainly is. Could you tell me what the ticket price includes, please? I'd like to book some tickets for this afternoon then, please. How many tickets would you like? My pleasure. Enjoy your visit.
Exercise 1B, page 73.
Good morning. This is the right place to get tickets for the Tower of London, isn't it?
Yes, it certainly is.
Could you tell me what the ticket price includes, please?
Sure. It includes a guided tour by one of the yeoman warders and entry to see the crown jewels and other special exhibitions.
That sounds great. I'd like to book some tickets for this afternoon then, please.
Yes, of course. Tickets are valid for 7 days from the day of purchase. How many tickets would you like?
2 adults, please.
OK, that's £39.60 then.
All right, here you are.
Thanks.
Could you tell me where the guided tours start from?
Sure. They start from just inside the gates every half an hour, so you can choose your own time.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Enjoy your visit.
Exercise 3B, page 73. One,
Let's visit the castle, shall we?
2,
You went on a ghost tour last summer, didn't you?
3,
You won't tell him, will you?
4,
Sam likes history, doesn't he?
5,
You couldn't lend me £20, could you?
6.
Don't leave the flat unlocked, will you?
4E. Unexplained phenomena. Exercise 1, page 74.
Mysterious places. We found out about some places that have some extremely weird phenomena. Read on to find out about some of the strangest places on the planet. The Hum, New Mexico, USA, and Woodland, UK. Everyone knows how annoying constant low-level noise can be. The sound of a slow dripping tap or someone repeatedly tapping their foot could drive a saint to distraction. So imagine what it must be like to live with that kind of irritating sound all the time. In the 1990s, residents of the town of Taos in New Mexico began complaining about hearing a faint sound, like a distant car engine. Not everyone hears the strange noise called the hum, but many of the victims complain of loss of sleep, dizziness, headaches, and anxiety. Investigators have suggested that the noise is caused by sounds produced naturally by the ear, or by waves crashing together on the ocean floor. Most recently, a hum also struck the tiny English village of Woodland in 2011.
It's loudest on Sundays,
says one resident.
It's a bit like a fridge, but it definitely isn't my fridge.
For the moment, the hum remains a mystery that continues to drive its victims mad.
The Tree of Life, Bahrain. Sitting majestically on a high sandy hill in the middle of the desert, 2 kilometers from Jebel Dukhan in Bahrain, is one of the most fascinating natural wonders of the world. The Tree of Life, an ancient mesquite tree, has survived in the desert for 400 years, miles from any other form of vegetation, and with no apparent source of water. Although the mesquite tree can develop a very wide and deep root system, scientists and biologists have been unable to locate the source of water that sustains the tree. This baffling enigma has made the tree a major tourist attraction in the Middle East. But for the local Bedouin tribes, there is no mystery about the tree. They believe that the mythical god of water, Enki, has blessed the tree and has kept it alive and growing all these years.
The Naga fireballs, Thailand and Laos. Every year, around the time of the October full moon and at the end of the Buddhist rains, hundreds of red glowing balls of light are seen shooting up from the Mekong River before silently exploding in mid-air. Skeptics put the phenomenon down to a clever hoax, but there are records written by monks who witnessed the mysterious fireballs hundreds of years ago. To many of the thousands of believers who gather along the banks of the Mekong to view this amazing sight, the fireballs are the breath of Naga, a mythical serpent that lives in the river.
I've seen the Naga,
says one local.
It was like a huge silver snake swimming down the river.
Others, however, believe that the fireballs are a natural phenomenon caused by methane gas bubbles escaping from the riverbed.
Black Mountain, Australia. Formed from volcanic magma around 260 million years ago, Black Mountain is made up of a labyrinth of massive black boulders. It's a wonderful, unique place, but it has a dark history, and locals claim visitors should beware. Explorers have described the maze of caves and narrow passageways in the mountain, and some have reported an interior inhabited by vampire bats and gigantic pythons within pockets of suffocating bad air. Countless stories tell of the people who have walked into the caves, never to return. Even a farmer and his herd of cattle are said to have disappeared into the mysterious caves. Some say that the eerie sounds of loud cries and banging are the lost trying to find their way out. Others insist it's the natural sounds of water and cracking stones in the caves. There is also a legend that a cat-like beast called the Queensland tiger is responsible for the disappearances, as it prowls the area and drags victims into its lair in the caves. Intriguingly, descriptions of the Queensland tiger closely resemble a species of lion which became extinct in Queensland about 20,000 years ago.
Exercise 5A, page 75. For F. Recreating monsters. Exercise 7A, page 77.
Back to life. When the last Pyrenean ibex died, killed by a falling tree, the species officially became extinct. But scientists had already taken and carefully preserved DNA samples from this wild mountain goat. Using these samples and a domestic goat's ovary eggs, they were able to bring the Pyrenean ibex back to life. Even though the clone lived for only 7 minutes, some scientists claim that advanced techniques could now be used to clone dinosaurs and unleash a real-life Jurassic Park on the world. Could a T-Rex really walk the Earth again? Well, dinosaurs were roaming the Earth over 65 million years ago, and dinosaur DNA doesn't last that long, even in teeth or bones. It is generally accepted that it can survive 100,000 years at the most. Jack Horner, a world-famous paleontologist at Montana State University, however, disagrees.
Of course we can bring them back to life,
he says.
The science is there.
In fact, in 2003, Jack and his team made a breakthrough that amazed scientists. While excavating the skeleton of a Tyrannosaurus rex at a remote site in Montana, its thigh bone broke in two as they were lifting it by helicopter. Back at the university, one of Jack's students was running tests on the bone when she suddenly found organic material. After it was placed under a microscope and magnified 4,000 times, she realized she was looking at dinosaur blood vessels, 68 million years old. It was an astonishing finding that suggests that DNA might last a lot longer than originally believed after all. So does this mean that we will be sharing Earth with cloned T-Rexes in the future? Jack believes it's possible, but a complete genetic map of a dinosaur would have to be worked out first, and that might take decades. For this reason, he is also looking at other ways to revive dinosaurs. Most scientists believe that birds are distant relatives of certain types of dinosaur and have some dormant DNA from their ancestors. So perhaps the answer lies with birds. Jack is not the only one following this line of research. At McGill University in Canada, Hans Larsson has conducted experiments into reactivating dinosaur DNA in birds. He had been investigating the evolution of dinosaurs' long tails into birds' short tails more than 150 million years ago. Larsson noticed that as an embryo, a chicken's tail has 16 small bones, but only 5 when it hatched out of the egg. It seemed that the embryo of a modern-day bird could contain the blueprint for a dinosaur. Larsson found that by changing the genetic makeup of a chicken, he could enlarge its tail by 3 more bones. This may not seem so impressive, but a series of alterations could result in a completely new kind of dinosaur. Larsson is convinced that this reverse evolution means that we could see a type of dinosaur within the next 100 years. That seems a long time to wait, but some Japanese scientists are more ambitious. The Tokyo researchers believe that they can bring the woolly mammoth back from the dead very soon. This distant ancestor of an elephant died out 8,000 years ago, so the chances of finding usable DNA are much higher. They intend to go on an expedition to frozen Siberia, where they are optimistic that they will find the necessary organic material. Scientists like Jack Horner are fascinated by the idea of unlocking the mysteries of a lost prehistoric world. He imagines himself teaching students on stage, accompanied by what he calls a dino chicken on a lead. He thinks that would be the most satisfying lecture he could ever give. Jack says,
There is now nothing to stop us bringing back dinosaurs but ourselves.
He continues, though,
Whether it is a good idea or not is another question.
(4G) Skills. Exercise 2, page 78.
Hi, welcome back. I'm Kylie Davis and you're listening to Bookworm Corner. Today we're receiving calls from listeners about books they've recently read. My next caller today is Anne Green, an enthusiastic reader of all kinds of fiction. Hello, Anne. Tell us about the book you've just read.
Hello, Kylie. Well, the book I've really enjoyed reading recently is a crime mystery novel written by Merlin Fraser. It's actually the first book in the Inner Space trilogy. It's called A New Style of Crime Mystery. So I'm going to give you a few details just to get you interested, but don't worry, I won't give away the ending. The hero of the story is Detective Inspector Nick Burton, who leads a normal life until his boss and friend, Chief Superintendent Dan Davis, is arrested and charged with murder. He doesn't want to believe that his boss could be capable of this crime, so he tries to find out the truth. But meanwhile, Davis dies in prison. The question is, was he murdered too? I really recommend this book to all mystery lovers. The characters are very believable, but also quite complicated, and I really felt that they came to life as the story developed. I really enjoyed the author's direct, down-to-earth writing style too. Apparently, he used to be an officer in the Navy and has a lot of experience in solving problems, which definitely comes through in his writing. Personally, I couldn't put this book down, and I can't wait to read the second book in the series.
Well, thank you, Anne, for your insight into what seems to be a really exciting, intriguing book. Our next caller is David from Edinburgh. David, hello and welcome to the show.
4H. Curricula. Literature. Exercise 1, page 79.
The Day of the Triffids is a science fiction novel written in 1951 by John Wyndham, 1903 to 1969. He was a British author, and this book established him as an important writer and remains his most famous novel. In this book, the Triffids are tall plants with legs that seem intelligent but are aggressive and attack mankind with their poisonous stings. The book has been adapted for TV twice and was also made into a film.
Exercise 5, page 79.
The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham. I wish, I told Susan irritably, you'd not keep on saying they hear. As if they were animals. They're not. They don't hear. They're just plants. All the same, they do hear somehow, Susan said. Well, anyway, we'll do something about them, I promised. As time went on, the numbers collected along the fence continued to increase in spite of our traps. They didn't try anything or do anything there. They simply settled down, wriggled their roots into the soil, and remained. At a distance, they looked as inactive as any other hedge. But if one doubted their alertness, it was only necessary to take a car down the lane. To do so, you had to battle through such viciously slashing stings that it was necessary to stop the car at the main road and wipe the windscreen clear of poison. Early one morning, Susan came running in to tell us that the things had broken in and were all around the house. The sky outside her bedroom window was grey, but when she went downstairs, she found everything there in complete darkness. She realized that should not be so and turned on the light. The moment she saw leathery green leaves pressed against the windows, she guessed what had happened. I crossed the bedroom on tiptoe and pulled the window shut sharply. Even as it closed, Sting whipped up from below and smacked against the glass. We looked down on a group of Triffids standing 10 or 12 deep against the wall of the house. The flamethrowers were in one of the outhouses. I took no risks when I went to fetch them. In thick clothing and gloves, with a leather helmet and goggles under a wire mask, I hacked my way through the Triffids with the largest carving knife I could find. The stings whipped and slapped at the wire mask so frequently that the poison began to come through in a fine spray. It misted the goggles, and the first thing I did in the outhouse was to wash it off my face. I didn't dare use the thrower more than once to clear my way back, for fear of setting the door and window frames on fire, but it moved them enough for me to get back unharmed. 2 more days passed before Susan and I could be sure that we had searched every corner of the enclosure and accounted for the very last of the intruders. 4 months later, they broke in again.
Skills Practice 4. Exercise 1B, page 82. Speaker 1.
Prehistoric people were much closer to nature than us, and I think nature was the only way they had to measure the passing of time. Stonehenge is round like a sundial, and I think that's what it was, really. Everyone knows that the rising sun shines directly on the central stone on the longest day of the year. To me, that shows it was used to measure time, perhaps to make farming easier to organize.
Speaker 2.
Throughout history, the largest and most impressive buildings have always been places of worship. It's as true of ancient Greece as it is of 21st century cities. It must have taken a huge effort to build Stonehenge with prehistoric technology, and I feel sure the reason was that people wanted a spiritual place, somewhere perhaps where they could pray for the gods to send them good weather.
Speaker 3.
I read a newspaper article saying that human remains found near Stonehenge show that people travelled there from as far away as Ireland, and a lot of them had bones that had something wrong with them. It made some scientists believe it was a place people visited to try to improve their health. Apparently, there are large stones at Stonehenge that the builders got from a mountain in Wales 150 miles away. People probably believed stones from that area had mysterious powers.
Speaker 4.
I think the Stonehenge we see today is only a small part of the original structure, and I think only a very advanced civilization could have built it, and not prehistoric humans. It seems likely to me that Stonehenge originally had a large roof which aliens used to arrive on and leave this planet in their spaceships. Who knows what the roof was made of? Perhaps something we can't imagine.
Speaker 5.
I know there's evidence that a lot of people were buried in the Stonehenge area. So I think it was a burial site, and the stones were memorial monuments, like giant gravestones for everyone. I've been there, and it's a very peaceful spot. The kind of place you'd like your loved ones to go to after they pass away.
Exercise 1, page 86.
The Tunguska event. Suddenly, the sky was split in two, and high above the forest, the whole northern part of the sky appeared covered in fire. At that moment, there was a bang in the sky and a mighty crash, followed by a noise like stones falling from the sky or of guns firing. The earth trembled. This is how a witness described one of the most mysterious and frightening events to occur on the planet in history. It was around 7 a.m. on the 30th of June 1908, near Vanavara in Siberia. And people were just waking up when suddenly there was a huge explosion in the skies above the Podkamene Tunguska River. The shock of the blast was so strong that it was recorded by instruments as far away as England. Millions of trees were flattened, and thousands of reindeer and other wildlife were killed. Surprisingly and fortunately, there were no human victims, though. After the blast, thick clouds gathered in the skies over the region, reflecting the sunlight away. At the time, no one understood what had happened, and local people thought that the god Ogdi had punished them. The Tunguska region is so remote that it took over a decade for scientists to organize an expedition to investigate the event. Most experts now believe that a comet or asteroid was to blame for the destruction. They say that as it ripped through the sky, it heated the air around it to 24,700 degrees Celsius and eventually exploded into a fireball at 8,500 meters above the ground, releasing energy equal to about 1,000 times the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Recent studies of the area have revealed a pleasantly surprising fact, though. The soil in the Tunguska area is richer than volcanic ash, and the plant life is growing 4 times faster than it normally should. In fact, it seems the comet, meteor or asteroid may have been a gift from the heavens, as the area is becoming like a Garden of Eden.